7:22 right here on Breakfast Television. Well, it is Eating Disorder Awareness Week, and joining me now is Dina Merhbi. Beautiful name, by the way.
Oh, thank you so much.
You are a registered dietitian, also the founder of Nutrition Montreal. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having me.
So, an important week to talk about this, eating disorders. So, I'm so happy you're here. So, let's talk about that. We often talk about anorexia, bulimia. I guess those are the two people hear about the most.
Yep.
But there are a lot of eating disorders.
Yes.
So let's start talking about some of the signs, some of the symptoms, things that you should be looking at with your friends, your family members, yourself, and eating disorders.
Well, some of the common eating disorders that we're more familiar with are, for example, anorexia, being underweight, having restrictive eating patterns, maybe having some compulsion in terms of exercise. We hear more and more about bulimia and binge eating. So this is where there might be a bit of yo-yo dieting, normal weight, being overweight, and again, that restriction and that overeating. But the two that I really want to talk about today, there's some new subtypes that we don't see them as an issue, but they can be problematic.
So when you say subtypes, what do you mean exactly?
So for example, eating disorders like the big title, and we have anorexia, bulimia, and binge eating that are categorized as eating disorders.
And these would fall under one of those categories?
Those fall under one of those categories. So under anorexia, we've seen something called orthorexia.
Orthorexia.
Have you heard about that?
No, I have not.
So orthorexia is what we've seen a lot in terms of the movement right now. Somebody making their own guidelines of what healthy eating should be, and they're very strict in terms of following those guidelines. And they're not following in terms of something that might be recommended for them, but there's a control issue. And for them, happiness is following those guidelines and not in terms of tasting the food. So that we might see it more under the anorexia type.
In your mind, what is that tipping point? Where do you go from someone who is just being conscious about their health to this is a problem?
When somebody's conscious about their health, for example, if they're going a certain way of organic eating, and then they find themselves at a place that they don't have organic food, they will still kind of eat the food. But when somebody says and they're hiding behind, I'm a vegan, or I'm only eat organic foods, and they will actually avoid social situations because of that, that's when you have to think, okay, what is going on in the background?
And what would be your suggestion if you have someone in your life that you think is dealing with that or may have an issue? How do you approach them? What do you do? And we're looking at some of the signs and symptoms. If you see one of these signs and symptoms, what's your suggestion on how you can approach a family member or a friend?
So as soon as you see somebody kind of secluding themselves, being in isolation, or actually avoiding social events, or that their weight is fluctuating, the first thing is to seek support. If you're the parent and the friend, you want to reach out as a parent or a friend, but your aim is not the therapy. So the most important thing is making sure that you seek support. You get the perfect timing to talk to the person, because food is not the issue. There's always a symptom and a sign behind it. So when somebody's not eating, you don't want to talk about their eating habits over the food table. You really want to make sure that you bring a nice, calm environment to be able to talk about them.
I don't want to forget, we also want to talk about one other subtype.
Yes.
Which one's that?
Another one is called muscle dysmorphia, which is actually bigorexia.
Bigorexia.
And the reason why I want to talk about it because it's more common in male. We always talk about eating disorders, it's a female problem, but we're seeing more and more males with that health issue as well.
Absolutely. And I mean, obviously, we now see the trend, the beauty industry is gearing more and more towards men. We're seeing a lot of beauty products for men. So this is something that you're seeing a lot more of.
We're seeing a lot more because then there's a lot of pressure for men to kind of bulk up. So they will go through extreme measures of exercise, not skipping one day of training, and also having those unhealthy eating behaviors. And again, if they skip one day of training, it's the end of the world. And that's when you're like, you can't skip a day. We need to dig a little bit more.
And maybe there's something there, I think a lot of people who take their training seriously, there's an obsessive part of that, right? So if the training is obsessive, perhaps that goes into the food they eat as well.
Yes.
Let's talk about living with eating disorder. What are some of the ways that you can effectively deal with an eating disorder?
The first step is really acknowledging that there might be an issue. So we only want to make sure you want to do a detox. And I'm not talking about a food detox. Information detox.
What does that mean?
Information detox, we see it in social media, in Facebook, and newsletters. All these things promoting a certain type of eating that could be restrictive or feeding anorexic behaviors. So you want to kind of unsubscribe from all these groups that kind of take you left and right of what you should eat. Also making sure in the home that there is no diet books, fitness books, and so on. Really starting out fresh. And making sure in your kitchen as well, you're starting with healthy and whole foods. And if you do keep diet foods at home, and if you're eating for the joy, the flavor, it's one thing. But if you're eating them because it's diet, we do want to limit that at the same time.
So at the end of the day, does it come down to eating to enjoy your life?
Yes. Eating to enjoy the life, and there's so much that we have to handle on our own, and this is where people, it's very important for them to reach out and to seek support because there are experts in this field. And this is why, in terms of Eating Disorder Awareness Week, we want to break the silence and stigma behind it, and you don't have to be on your own with this because it affects nearly 1 million Canadians.
Wow.
So,
1 in 30,
and
1 in 35 Canadians dealing with this. Dina Merhbi, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
This is the week to talk about an Eating Disorder Awareness Week. Thanks so much. Stay with us here on Breakfast Television. When we come back, you'll look at local news headlines and sports coming up.